Yeah. So we're looking at 4 Speysiders for this particular flight. Speyside is an area in its own right for Scotch whisky production, and it's within the Highlands, and it's the area from just north of Aviemore up towards the Moray Firth, and then further over, getting towards Aberdeenshire. The largest concentration of Scotch whisky distilleries in Scotland, with just over 50 there now in one relatively small area. So we've got 4 expressions of Speyside, each one slightly different, but all still relatively classical. None of them are super funky or particularly weird. We'll be doing those another time. Kicking off with, I suppose, sort of a benchmark. Now, it's a name that everybody will know, everyone will recognise, they will see it in supermarkets. It's maybe, for us at least, maybe not our natural territory, because it's such a big brand, it's so widely available, but it is incredibly important. Until very, very recently, until Glenlivet just took over, it was the #1 largest sales single malt Scotch in the world. Glenlivet has just picked it, only just though. So those 2 vie for top position. As a result, it's a really important one to know about, and it's a really important one to sort of understand, I think, if you want to take that whisky journey and fully appreciate what everything else has, because this is really the starting point. Glenfiddich is, for me, what it should be, and what the Grant family want it to be, is archetypal, soft, easy drinking, slightly floral but grassy style of Speyside. I think it's easy to get swayed by the oft-used sherry cask maturation for Speyside whiskies, but that takes away, or doesn't take away, it can hide or take over from the general characteristic of Speyside whisky, which is relatively light, easy drinking, and grassy, and that's what, for me, Glenfiddich has in spades. It has all the grassiness, fresh cut grass and apples, and really lovely soft nose, and I love it. This is a 12-year-old. It's the entry-level one for Glenfiddich, bottled at 40%, which is the bare minimum. So they're doing, they do that deliberately, because it's a huge selling brand. For me, I don't know of any bad single malt scotches. I really don't. I think they're all great in their own way. Some are obviously better than others. It all comes down to personal preference, personal taste. But for me, I think Glenfiddich is a benchmark one, which is really quite important to at least try once and then move on and try other things. So easy sipping, you could, if you wanted to, dare I say it, you could pop some ice in this, and it would be a lovely light summer drink. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but the addition of water will bring out more flavour, more long chain esters, but I don't think it's overly necessary with this. At 40%, I think it's on the money.
It is. I mean, I find this one, I've had this before obviously, but I mean, as you said, it is a really good, easy drinking whiskey. It's one of the whiskies I grew up with, effectively. When Dad or his friends brought whiskey and we went out and did something, somebody would have a Glenfiddich.
Yeah. There's sweetness there in the mid palate, a little bit of vanilla-y character coming from bourbon casks. But there's lovely cereal and broader sweet flavours coming through as well. I think it's very easy to not be disparaging, but to forget about how good these big brands are. And you know, some of the big brands, you know, named but a few, like Highland Park, 12-year-old, Bunnahabhain 12-year-old, Lagavulin, Lefroy, you know, they're big names that you were seeing all over the world in supermarkets and bars, everywhere. But they're incredible whiskies. The ability to make a consistent product, always tasting like this, is phenomenal.
And the other thing about these ones is they're the sort of ones you keep an eye on in the supermarkets, because they'll suddenly do a buy two for £3.50 or something. Not quite, but you know what I mean. Not quite,
but when you can get a product like Glenfiddich 12-year-old or Highland Park 12-year-old or something like that for £25 on promotion in the supermarket, it's incredible. You know, you're talking some of the best scotches there are for very, very, very little money.
Yeah.
As long as people don't take away from that is the reality of what the pricing of that product should be. That is a promotional price, which is driven usually by the supermarket.
And
to drive footfall.
And they're doing the numbers. They've got
it's
the numbers,
not. It doesn't bear any relation to the proper value of that product. It is a heavily discounted promotional price. Anyway, there you go.
I must admit, that one I prefer without water.
Yes, absolutely. It's always important to try, when tasting whiskey for the first time, try it without first, a little touch next, just to see how it changes.
I think it almost doesn't kill it, but yeah.
Yeah, I think
it's almost not strong enough to
40%, it doesn't need it. It's designed to be an easy, accessible, dare I say, supermarket whiskey that people can just dip into for the first time. And it's very often most people's entry into the world of single malt. And I think it achieves it brilliantly.
That's pretty nice, dude.
Yeah.
So,
Tamdhu 10. So, Tamdhu, another Speyside, obviously 10-year-old this time as opposed to 12. Bottled at 40%. Tamdhu is owned by a company called Ian MacLeod. They've had it for a few years now. It's seen a lot of changes in ownership. The most recent change in ownership is responsible for this rather awesome Art Deco shaped.
It's a brilliant bottle, isn't it?
Yeah. When I first saw it, being a relative traditionalist, I was a bit unsure about it. But the more I see it, the more I sell it, the more I drink it, the more I think actually they've done a great job.
Yes.
It was a brave decision.
You probably can't see it on the video, but it's these wonderful lines down the side of it. So facets.
Yeah, it is. They've done great with it. So cheers. See what you think of this. This is a very different animal on the nose.
Yeah, very different.
And what you're smelling there, because Tamdhu inherently, in terms of the spirit, is slightly heavier. There's no two ways about it. Glenfiddich stills are big, and they produce a lighter style of new make. Tamdhu's new make is slightly heavier, but the main difference for the change in flavour in this, or the different flavour, is the amount of sherry casks that these guys use. And Tamdhu claim, at least, that everything they produce goes into sherry casks. So you instantly on the nose, it differs because you're getting a much, sort of perceptible, heavier nose, more nuttiness, more caramel, a little bit more toffee. There's honey as well.
I must admit, I'm getting quite into my sherry whiskies.
Yeah.
Now you've introduced me to them over the years. I came at it from probably a slightly strange direction. I came at it from the peaty ones first, because they used to sail up the west coast, and that's what everyone drank was the peaty ones. And the sherry ones I haven't discovered until much later. That's really nice.
And with all good whiskies, you're supposed to chew them. So you hold it in your mouth, and you roll it around your mouth, and you chew it. Don't do what we in the wine trade would do, which is slurp to aerate the wine. That generally doesn't end too well because of the amount of alcohol going up into your olfactory bulb. But if you roll it around your mouth and you chew it, and in the case of the Tamdhu, really hold it in your mouth and spend at least 10-15 seconds with it in your mouth, rolling it around, hitting all the different taste buds, getting all the aromas up and you will start to experience a different level of flavour the longer it spends in your mouth, because it's warming up in your mouth, but also, far more importantly, your olfactory bulb is beginning to smell and taste, and it works in conjunction with the limited ability of your palate to analyse the flavour. So yeah, broader, heavier, chewier because of the sherry cask influence. I think we mentioned black tea earlier with the gin. For me, there's black tea on this, especially mid palate, and then you get a lovely little bit of warm brown spice coming through.
It's really nice. I mean, very, very different.
Very different. Yeah. This is more, I suggest, digestive, contemplative style of single malt, one that you would have post dinner. Whereas the Glenfiddich, being as light and as fresh and as easy drinking as it is more of an aperitif, I would say.
Yeah, I would say you drink that anytime. Yeah. I mean, we used to drink it walking up Benromach.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the sort of one, or going to watch the rugby, you'd have it in the hip flask.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, yeah, I would agree with that one, sitting in front of the fire at the end of the day.
Right. It's lovely that, isn't it?
It is very nice. Right.
Okay, so we are now going increasingly down in scale to I suppose, the ultimate extreme, which is one single cask. Thank you. So we've gone from the behemoth, which is Glenfiddich, through to Tamdhu, which in single malt distillery production is small. Independently owned, if you classify Ian MacLeod as an independent distiller. And now we've gone to a true independent. These guys do actually own a distillery. However, this is an independently bottled product. It's a single cask of Glenrothes, and tell you everything you need to know on the label. Obviously the distillery, who's bottled it, which in this case it's Morrison and Mackay from Perth. What it's been matured in, and they tell you it's a Puncheon, and a Puncheon is a specific size of a sherry cask, ex-sherry cask. And Puncheons are large. I think I'm right saying about 500 litres. As a result, they've got 905 bottles out of this cask. Obviously they tell the age, 7-year-old. These guys aren't afraid of hiding behind a non-age statement, just giving something a name. They tell you exactly what it is, because they are well aware that age is not irrelevant, but it is, in terms of quality, it's not that important. You can have a very, very young single malt, which can sometimes be incredibly gorgeous, sometimes even better than a much older one. Time in cask, age of whiskey doesn't always mean it's going to be good. And certainly in the case of a single cask, when you bear in mind that every single cask of single malt will age and mature differently to its neighbour in a warehouse, because it's put in oak. Oak, well, obviously was a living thing, and every single stave and every single grain within that stave is unique to that particular cask, so the impact on the flavour of that cask will be unique. So you could have 2 of these casks filled at exactly the same time with the same stuff, aged for the same length of time, bottled by the same people, and they could taste remarkably different. So this is a moment in time, a snapshot of one single cask of Glenrothes.
It's lovely.
Yeah, Glenrothes is Speyside. This isn't from Glenrothes in Fife. This is from the Glen of Rothes.
Yeah, you can definitely smell and taste the extra alcohol on the other 2. There's a bit more of a burn there. It's nice.
Now, you will notice a similar characteristic to the Tamdhu, because it's a sherry cask. You've got the dry, nutty, there's walnuts and almonds, then there's toffee and some butterscotch, sweetness coming through. Now, it's cloudy, as you can see, because because these guys do not chill filtrate. Most independent bottlers won't put it through that process. Chill filtration is a process to extract the sediment, the cloudiness, which will precipitate when it gets cold. So all the big brands will do it. They also do it to negate the fact that they've sometimes added caramel to colour. And big brands again will colour their whiskey, not to make it look older, but to keep a consistency of colour throughout batches. So like we found with the Strathern gin, which can be remarkably different from one batch to the next, the big brands, they can't cope with that. Because if you're buying it from a supermarket and there's nobody there to tell you why that is, then you're going to get put off that brand. So they colour for consistency purposes.
Right.
Independent bottlers such as Morrison and Mackay, and certainly some big single malt brands such as Bruichladdich, Springbank, Tamdhu. Actually, I believe after this one they don't add any colouring or chill filtration. They won't do that process because they don't need to, because these are all hand sold through independent whiskey merchants and good quality bars and hotels. So there's people there, and also they're preaching to the converted as well. Folk who buy these kind of things know the score. They know what to expect.
It's not quite as sherry as that one, though. Is that because it was a bigger cask?
Not necessarily. No, it could be that it is second, third, sometimes even fourth use.
All right. Okay.
So a lot of the sherry character could have gone. There's no two ways about it. Tamdhu, for what is their entry level, for want of a better term, expression of single malt from that distillery, it's an amazing level of sherry character for the price as well. It's remarkably well priced.
I agree. It is a lovely bottle. I do like that bottle.
Yeah. So there we go. That is a single cask expression of a Speyside Glenrothes 7-year-old, but it doesn't taste young, does it? I would argue that that's got a lot of complexity, a lot of richness and depth of flavour.
That is a very nice whiskey. And then last but not least
is Benromach, 10-year-old, and again, this is something that you can find in some supermarkets, not all, but certainly some. So it's a relatively big brand. I've bookended this little flight with two brands that are relatively widely available. I wanted to show this because what it shows is that not all Speysiders are as straightforward as what we have with the three that preceded it. We spoke about the general characteristics of most Speyside distilleries, which is a light, fragrant, sometimes grassy, certainly fresh style of single malt. A lot of use of sherry casks, just traditionally over the years has grown up, so you get distilleries like Aberlour, Tamdhu, Glenfarclas, Macallan obviously, Mortlach, Duffton, all using lots and lots of sherry casks, and that has become an identity for Speyside, built on top of the inherent characteristics of the new make spirit.
Right.
Then you come to somebody like Benromach, who use a little bit of peat.
I was about to say,
It's obviously there. It's not Isla peat. This is not sort of big, smoky, bonfirey, barbecued sausage styles of peat. This is very, very subtle, just in the background. And they've always done it. And this is, for me, why I like Benromach. It is relatively unique. With the explosion of Scotch whisky, in particular single malt, the popularity of single malts, is you're now getting distilleries all over Scotland experimenting and putting out different expressions of what would normally be expected. So you're now getting unpeated Islas, you're getting peated Lowlanders and peated Speysiders, and sometimes far, far more peaty than, say, Lafroig or Lagavulin. This isn't that. This is something that has, as far as I remember, has always been like this. just a very, very soft application of peat.
Yes, you can smell sort of almost medicinal smell to it. It's very nice though.
It's very warming. This for me is the ideal Munro bagging whisky because it's not too full on. It's one that you can enjoy relatively easily from a hip flask. 43%. That little bit of warming peat just fortifies. It's really, really well made, I think.
Yeah, it does have a lovely smell to it. Very, very.
The peat is softly spicy, tingly almost. It's again you're getting, I think there the mid palate black tea. There's some white chocolate as well.
Yeah.
If you go beyond
Yes,
the peat, and some sweetness.
That is very nice.
It's a bit of an eye opener for people who think they've experienced most of what Speyside has to offer. Like I said, there are an awful lot of Speysiders now who are putting out limited editions or sort of parallel expressions which are very, very, very heavily peated, and they'll sometimes give them another name so not to confuse. But Benromach has always been like this. There have been others, Banff famously, but this for me kind of stands on its own in as much as it's very softly peated, just there, blending a real interest.
If you thought that was Speyside, that is so different. And as you say, really nicely different.
And again, for a large production distillery that you can buy in a lot of places, it's really good. Really, really
That's
well made.
very nice. Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure.